this unit, you are going to learn about the passive voice. You will learn how passives are formed and when they are used. And you'll learn what verbs are not used in the passive. You will also learn how to use the construction have something done. We use a passive rather than an active construction when we are more interested in the action that happened than in who did the action. In an active sentence, the subject comes first and then we say what the subject has done. The object of the action follows the verb. Many people use computers. In a passive sentence, the object comes first. Then we say what was done to it. At the end of the sentence, we have the agent the action was done by. Computers are used by many people. In general, we use passives, or passives are used, when we want to talk about an action but are not interested in, or we do not know who did the action, when the emphasis is on the action rather than the actor. My car has been stolen. Passives are used a great deal in scientific writing and in describing processes where what is done is more important than who does it. Passive verb forms are made with the past participle after the verb to be. Let's review the different tenses of to be, as you'll need to know them to form passives. Infinitive, to be. Perfect infinitive, to have been. Gerund, being. Perfect gerund, having been. Present simple, I am, he, she, it is, we, you, they are. Present continuous, I am being, he, she, it is being, we, you, they are being. Past simple, I, he, she, it was, we, you, they were. Past continuous, I, he, she, it was being, we, you, they were being. Present perfect simple, I, you, we, they have been, he, she, it has been. Past perfect simple, I, you, he, she, it, we, they had been. Going to, future. I am going to be. He, she, it is going to be. We, you, they are going to be. Have to. I, you, we, they have to be. He, she, it has to be. Have got to. I, you, we, they have got to be. He, she, it has got to be. Used to. I, you, he, she, it, we, they used to be. Present of modal verbs. Remember, modal verbs are the same for all persons. Will be. Would be. Can be. Could be. Shall be. Should be. May be. Might be. Must be. Ought to be. Needn't be. Perfect of modal verbs. Will have been. Would have been. Can have been. Could have been. Shall have been. Should should have been. May have been. Must have been. Might have been. Ought to have been. Needn't have been. Some tenses have not been given the present and past perfect continuous and the future progressive and future perfect progressive, because these tenses are so rarely used in passive forms. To form a passive sentence, we normally use the same tense that would be used in the active sentence. The object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive sentence. Use the correct form of the verb to be for that tense. Add the past participle of the verb in the active sentence. Let's look at a few examples. The first is a present simple sentence. Someone washes the windows twice a year. The passive sentence is, the windows are washed twice a year. With a past simple sentence, for example, my employer paid me yesterday. The passive sentence is, I was paid yesterday. With a present perfect sentence, they have cut down the old trees in the square. The passive sentence is, the old trees in the square have been cut down. With a sentence that has the going to future, they are going to build a new supermarket in Alton. The passive sentence is, a new supermarket is going to be built in Alton. With a sentence that has have to, you have to feed goldfish every other day. Goldfish have to be fed every other day. With sentences with a modal verb, passengers must fasten their seatbelts while the plane is taking off. You can buy a computer quite cheaply. The passive sentences are, seatbelts must be fastened while the plane is taking off. A computer can be bought quite cheaply. With a sentence that has a modal verb in the perfect tense, they shouldn't have cut down the old trees in the square. The old trees in the square shouldn't have been cut down. Note that we can also use passive sentences in continuous forms. You say to someone, I don't have my car today, it is at the mechanic's. He is servicing it. Or, it is being serviced. You say to someone, we got to the hotel a bit early. They were cleaning our room and making the beds. Or, our room was being cleaned and the beds were being made. All these forms of the verb to be are on the list you have. To form a passive, you simply need to use the correct form and add a past participle. In a passive sentence, the person that the action was done by, the agent, comes at the end of the sentence. Not every passive sentence needs an agent. This is logical, as one reason we use passive sentences is that we do not know who did something, or we do not need to know. When there is an agent in a passive sentence, it is introduced by the preposition by. Look at these examples. My grandmother knitted this bedspread. This bedspread was knitted by my grandmother. One of the board members is going to write the report. The report is going to be written by one of the board members. In questions, by normally follows the verb at the end of the sentence. Who wrote Hamlet? Who was Hamlet written by? If you wish to avoid using a preposition at the end of the sentence, use the active form. Other prepositions used in passive sentences include of, from, and with. When we talk about the material in an object, we use of. if it is the only or principal material. It's made of wood. These blouses are made of silk. We can also use from to show the material of which something is made, generally when we wish to indicate the source or origin of a product, when the material is not immediately visible. Wine is made from grapes. With is used when there are several materials. These biscuits are made with coconut and chocolate. What is mayonnaise made with? With is used for instruments. He was killed with a gun. With is also used with some verbs which refer to states rather than actions. Crowded with, decorated with, filled with. In an earlier lesson, we saw that some verbs can be followed by two objects, both a direct and an indirect object. I gave George the book. These verbs include ask, bring, buy, give, lend, offer, pay, promise, send, show, take, teach, tell. When these verbs are used in the passive, two different possible passive sentences can be formed. The book was given to George. George was given the book. In other words, either the direct object or the indirect object of the active sentence can become the subject of the passive sentence. In most cases, it is the person that becomes the subject of the passive sentence. Here are some other examples. When I went to school, they didn't give us much homework. When I went to school, we weren't given much homework. They promised us a full investigation of the question. We were promised a full investigation of the question. She showed us all the rooms in her new house. We were shown all the rooms in her new house. It is also possible to use the direct object as the subject of the passive sentence, but this is less frequent. We used to be taught Latin in middle school. Latin used to be taught to us in middle school. Are both correct? But the first sentence is the one that would normally be used. While transitive verbs can be used in the passive, verbs such as happen, exist, arrive, laugh, cry, sleep, which have no object, cannot become passive. This is logical. There is no object that could become the subject of a passive sentence. Not all transitive verbs can be used in the passive, however. Most of those that cannot are verbs that refer to states rather than to actions. Many of them are verbs that have no progressive form. Have, get, resemble, fit, suit. A car is had by me. Her mother is resembled by Vanessa. Presents are got by me on my birthday. Are mistakes. Many intransitive prepositional verbs can be used in the passive. Here are some. Ask for, break into, call for, call on, care for, count on, deal with, decide on, enter into, hear of, hope for, insist on, listen to, look after, look at, object to, pay for, plan for, reason with, refer to, rely on, send for, subscribe to, talk about. When you use a prepositional verb in the passive, the object of the preposition becomes the subject of the verb in the passive sentence. The preposition must remain after the verb. Every everybody was talking about the fire. The fire was being talked about. We haven't decided on a plan yet. No plan has been decided on yet. Unfortunately, there are no clear rules about which prepositional verbs can and which cannot be used in the passive. For example, you can use reason with or deal with, but you cannot use agree with. He cannot be reasoned with is correct. That question will be dealt with in a few minutes is correct. I was agreed with by everyone present is a mistake. The only advice I can give you is to consult a dictionary and look at the usage examples when you are not sure whether a prepositional verb can be used in the passive. Some verbs in English are nearly always used in the passive. Of these, the most important from every point of view is to be born. It can be used in the present tense for describing statistics or things that happen all the time. More girls are born than boys. 500 babies are born in New York every day. When talking about someone who exists or existed, you must use the past tense. I was born in New York in 1955. When were you born? When was Queen Elizabeth I born? The verb die is instead an intransitive verb and cannot be used in the passive. It must be used in the active voice. James Dean died in a car crash in 1955. How old was Agatha Christie when she died? If you say John Lennon is dead, you are referring to a state, not the moment when he died. When we wish to say, I employed someone to do something for me, we can use the construction have plus object plus past participle. This indicates that you did not do something yourself, but that someone did it for you. I have my car serviced by the local mechanic. Yesterday, I went to the dentist's. I had a tooth filled. I'm going to the dry cleaners and I'm going to have my suit cleaned. Instead of a noun, have can also be followed by a pronoun. My watch is broken. I must have it repaired. Get can be used in the same way in informal discourse. I got my eyes checked last week. Have or get must be followed by an object. You cannot place the participle before the object. I have cut my hair. I get washed the car are mistakes. I have my hair cut. I have the car washed are correct. In negative sentences and questions in the present simple and past simple, we use do, does, did. Do you have your eyes checked regularly? Where does she have her photographs developed? He made that bench himself. He didn't have it made. That is the end of the lesson. Now you can do the exercises on the grammar points presented in this unit.